I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
Jeffrey Epstein may be dead, but this story isn't. A shocking new report from the New York Times sheds light on the connection between Microsoft founder Bill Gates and the late Jeffrey Epstein. After Gates' name came up in connection with Epstein and MIT Media Lab, Gates gave a statement to the Wall Street Journal where he insisted he did not have any business relationship or friendship with Epstein. But new reporting from the New York Times outlines numerous meetings between Gates and Epstein and a conversation with Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation, a connection between their foundation and J.P. Morgan to set up a charitable fund that would financially benefit Epstein. You know what I want to know? Why? Joining me now, one of the New York Times reporters from this story, James B. Stewart. Gates says, no relationship, nada, nothing. You report these two men met at least 6 times. What does Gates say about that?
Well, I believe that there were more, and he and his spokespeople would not say how many in total they actually met. But this included visits to the mansion, seeing each other in Seattle, flying on Epstein's plane, when we all know Bill Gates has his own $40 million plane. And then, as an investigative reporter, why would Gates say, oh, I had no relationship with him, when, of course, he knows what the facts are? So that always sets off red flags for me.
He also has one of the largest, most established foundations on his own.
Yes.
Why would they ever set up a charitable trust benefiting Jeffrey Epstein?
Well,
what's the explanation?
Not only does he have the world's largest charitable foundation, but one of their primary missions is to help young women in underprivileged countries. Jeffrey Epstein was preying on young women from Eastern Europe, from South Africa, luring them into his web. And it's the antithesis of what the Gates Foundation stands for. And by the way, there were Gates Foundation employees who were horrified when they realized what Jeffrey Epstein had done and was saying, we don't want to have anything to do with this, and yet the project went on.
From the New York Times, Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein many times despite his past. At Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan mansion in 2011, from left, James E. Saley, at the time a senior J.P. Morgan executive, former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, Mr. Epstein, Bill Gates, Microsoft's co-founder, and Boris Nikolic, who was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation science advisor. October 12th, 2019. Jeffrey Epstein managed to lure an astonishing array of rich, powerful, and famous men into his orbit. They were billionaires, Leslie Wexner and Leon Black, politicians, Bill Clinton and Bill Richardson, Nobel laureates, Murray Gell-Mann and Frank Wilczek, and even royals, Prince Andrew. Few, though, compared in prestige and power to the world's second richest person, a brilliant and intensely private luminary, Bill Gates. And unlike many others, Mr. Gates started the relationship after Mr. Epstein was convicted of sex crimes. Mr. Gates, the Microsoft co-founder, whose $100 billion plus fortune has endowed the world's largest charitable organization, has done his best to minimize his connections to Epstein. Quote, I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him, he told the Wall Street Journal last month. In fact, beginning in 2011, Gates met with Epstein on numerous occasions, including at least 3 times at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, and at least once staying late into the night. According to interviewers with more than a dozen people familiar with the relationship, as well as documents reviewed by the New York Times. Employees of the Gates Foundation also paid multiple visits to Epstein's mansion, and Epstein spoke with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and J.P. Morgan Chase about a proposed multi-million-dollar charitable fund. An arrangement that had the potential to generate enormous fees for Mr. Epstein. Quote, his lifestyle is very different and kind of intriguing, although it would not work for me, Mr. Gates emailed colleagues in 2011 after his first get-together with Epstein. Brigitte Arnold, a spokeswoman for Gates, said he, quote, was referring only to the unique decor of the Epstein residence, and Epstein's habit of spontaneously bringing acquaintances in to meet Mr. Gates. It was in no way meant to convey a sense of interest or approval, she said. I'm not sure if lifestyle means artwork and decor and strange habits. Maybe. Over and over, Mr. Epstein managed to cultivate close relationships with some of the world's most powerful men. He lured them in with the whiff of money and the proximity to other powerful, famous, or wealthy people. So much so that many looked past his reputation for sexual misconduct. And the more people he drew into his circle, the easier it was for him to attract others. And Melanie Walker, who had known Mr. Epstein since 1992, joined the Gates Foundation as a senior program officer in 2006. Two members of Gates' inner circle, Boris Nikolic and Melanie Walker, were close to Mr. Epstein and at times functioned as intermediaries between the two men. Miss Walker met Mr. Epstein in 1992, 6 months after graduating from the University of Texas. Epstein, who was an advisor to Mr. Wexner, the owner of Victoria's Secret, told Miss Walker that he could land her an audition for a modeling job there, according to Miss Walker. She later moved to New York and stayed in a Manhattan apartment building that Epstein owned. After she graduated from medical school, she said, Epstein hired her as a science advisor in 1998. Miss Walker later met Steven Sinofsky, a senior executive at Microsoft, who became president of its Windows division and moved to Seattle to be with him. In 2006, she joined the Gates Foundation with the title of Senior Program Officer. At the foundation, Miss Walker met and befriended Mr. Nikolic, a native of what is now Croatia and former fellow at Harvard Medical School, who was the foundation's science advisor. Nikolic and Gates frequently traveled and socialized together. Miss Walker, who had remained in close touch with Mr. Epstein, introduced him to Mr. Nikolic, and the men became friendly. Epstein and Gates first met face-to-face on the evening of January 31st, 2011 at Epstein's townhouse. They were joined by Dr. Eva Anderson Dubin, a former Miss Sweden, whom Mr. Epstein had once dated, and her 15-year-old daughter. Dr. Anderson Dubin's husband, the hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, was a friend and business associate of Epstein's. The Dubins declined to comment. The gathering started at 8 and lasted several hours, according to Miss Arnold, Mr. Gates' spokeswoman. Mr. Gates praised Epstein's charm and intelligence. Emailing colleagues the next day, he said, quote, "A very attractive Swedish woman and her daughter dropped by, and I ended up staying there quite late. Wonder what that could mean." Gates and Epstein saw each other again at a TED conference in Long Beach. Attendees spotted the two men engaged in private conversation. Later that spring, on May 3, 2011, Gates again visited Mr. Epstein at his New York mansion, according to the emails about the meeting and a photograph reviewed by the Times. The photo, taken in Epstein's marble-clad entrance hall, shows a beaming Mr. Epstein, flanked by luminaries. On his right, James E. Staley, at the time a senior J.P. Morgan executive, and former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers. On his left, Mr. Nikolic and Mr. Gates, smiling and wearing gray slacks and a navy sweater. Around that time, the Gates Foundation and J.P. Morgan were teaming up to create the Global Health Investment Fund. Its goal was to provide, quote, individual and institutional investors the opportunity to finance late-stage global health technologies that have the potential to save millions of lives in low-income countries. Some of the Gates Foundation employees said they had been unaware of Mr. Epstein's criminal record and had been shocked to learn that the foundation was working with a sex offender. They worried it could seriously damage the foundation's reputation. In early 2012, another Gates Foundation team met Epstein at his mansion. He claimed that he had access to trillions of dollars of his client's money that he could put in a proposed charitable fund, a figure so preposterous that it left his visitors doubting Mr. Epstein's credibility. March 2013, Gates flew on Epstein's Gulfstream plane from Teterboro, New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida, according to Flight Manifest. Miss Arnold said Mr. Gates, who has his own $40 million jet, hadn't been aware it was Mr. Epstein's plane. Yeah, right. 6 months later, Mr. Nikolic and Mr. Gates were in New York for a meeting related to Schrödinger, a pharmaceutical software company in which Mr. Gates had a large investment. On that trip, Epstein and Gates met for dinner and discussed the Gates Foundation and philanthropy, Miss Arnold said. October 2014, Gates donated $2 million to MIT's Media Lab. University officials described the gift in internal emails as having been directed by Mr. Epstein. At least 2 senior Gates Foundation officials maintained contacts with Epstein until late 2017, according to former Foundation employees. And of course, they all say they regret meeting Mr. Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein entertained Bill and Melinda Gates, Steve Bannon, Prince Andrew at his Paris apartment, claims Butler, who was told by his state to move into the pied-a-terre days before probe. I don't know what the fuck a pied-a-terre is, but okay. The man who spent the past 18 years working as Epstein's butler at his $8 million Paris apartment is speaking about his boss's famous friends. Gabriel said that Prince Andrew, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and Steve Bannon were also guests at the residence. A source close to Bannon said it never happened, despite Gabriel claiming he drove the man around the city just last fall. Gabriel said Bill and Melinda Gates had visited, and while the rep did not respond to a request comment, the couple has denied any personal ties in the past. I'm sure all these people were just meeting up, talking about ways to save the world.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Wait a minute. Lower the population? And there's this from the Daily Mail. Engineer employed at Bill Gates' mansion traded 6,000 child porn images using Gmail account. Published January 1st, 2015.
They found out that the man actually worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates mansion on the grounds of their sprawling 66,000 square foot estate, and that's where they found him and questioned him last March. The estate is behind us right on the lakefront here, but this is a few blocks away and it's as close as their security will allow us to get. But according to King County prosecutors, 51-year-old Rick Allen Jones was questioned by detectives about images of child porn and even child rape that were sent from Jones's home computer. Now, none of this alleged crime actually happened at the Gates mansion, but it was here that Rick Allen Jones admitted to detectives he collected child porn for about 10 years, sending images through his Gmail account. Now, while Jones was talking to detectives at the Gates estate, 3 more SPD detectives had a search warrant to search Jones's Ballard apartment. There, they say they found more than 6,000 images of graphic child porn and rape, 133 of which were children identified by police. We tried Jones's apartment for comment. We got no response. We also reached out to Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation, and we did not hear back. So, in fact, we do not know if he's been fired by the Gates' family.
Cops allegedly found more than 6,000 images of child porn at the home of Jones in the Ballard neighborhood of Seattle. The 51-year-old was employed as an engineer at the home of Bill Gates. Among the horrific images were photographs showing the rape of a boy around the age of 10 and the rape of a girl around the same age. None of the alleged crimes took place at the Gates home. The Microsoft founder has not released a statement on the allegations against Jones. It's not clear if he's still employed at the mansion. Jones has not been jailed but was ordered to stay away from children. According to reports, he's due to appear in court in the coming days. And from Como News, June 24th, 2015, a Seattle man previously employed as an engineer at Bill and Melinda Gates' home, who was caught with a 6,000 image child pornography collection, won't see prison time for that offense. Charged in late December, Rick Allen Jones admitted he'd been collecting child rape videos and photos for a decade before police intervened. Jones quietly pleaded guilty to related charges on Friday and was sentenced to 90 days in King County Jail, as well as 2 years probation. Jones is now required to register as a sex offender and to stay away from children unless certain conditions are met. Pleading guilty, Jones admitted to possessing child pornography showing the sexual abuse of a boy. He also admitted to failing to report the child pornography. Jones, 52, was first contacted by police at the Microsoft founder's estate while working for the billionaire couple in March 2014. Jones drew investigators' attention in late 2013 after sharing a suspicious photo through Google's email service. The photo captured sexual exploitation of two preteen boys. Investigators tracked the image to Jones's Ballard apartment, which they searched on March 20th, 2014. Jones was not there at the time, but investigators learned he was likely working at the Gates Medina home. Two detectives drove to the sprawling lakefront estate and met Jones in the estate security office, according to charging papers. They then interviewed him in a parked SUV. Jones initially claimed he shared child pornography online just once, but then admitted he'd been collecting it for years. Jones said he had been collecting child pornography for about 10 years now and has had an interest in young boys since he himself was a teenager, a Seattle Police Department detective told the court. Detectives have since reviewed electronics seized from Jones' apartment. They claim to have found 6,495 images known to law enforcement to be child pornography, including 133 in which the children abused on camera have been identified by police. Among the images were photos showing the anal rape of an 8 to 10-year-old boy and the rape of an 8 to 10-year-old girl. The charges to which Jones pleaded guilty, child pornography possession, a felony, and failing to report child pornography, a misdemeanor, would ordinarily have meant a 3 to 9 month jail term. Prosecutors agreed to recommend a slightly shorter jail term, in part because Jones was the caretaker for his ailing mother. Jones was judged to be a low-risk offender following a psychiatric evaluation. Jones is expected to report to King County Jail on July 10th. He had not previously been jailed in the matter. Well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Not to waste too much time, but I've looked around. I can't find a picture of this guy, and I can't find him on a sex registry. Even though he denies it, Bill Gates was a business associate of Jeffrey Epstein's, and the engineer for his house was arrested for child pornography. This may not prove anything, but birds of a feather. That's all I'm saying. Fucking stoned.